Bonjour à toutes et à tous. Bienvenue sur Learn to French. My name is Eden. I am a French teacher and I have a blog called learntofrench.com. I teach French to students from all around the world. So today we are going to talk about another topic, which is Passé composé versus Imparfait. This is a question that has been coming back to me as a French teacher when I ask learners, what is your biggest struggle in learning French? What is giving you the hardest time in your French learning journey? And of course, I've had many answers, but this question was actually coming back. It was the first one that kept on coming back to me. When should I use and how should I use passé composé versus imparfait? Now, we both know that those are past tenses, okay? They express things that are in the past in French, both of them. And the question was, when should you use them? When? I know that they are both tenses to express things in the past, but how and when should I use them? So it is very important to take note that passé composé and imparfait are both tenses in the indicatif mood, le mode indicatif. So if you need a reminder for that, you can click on the link of the article after you've listened to this podcast. Passé composé and imparfait are the two tenses that you are going to use when you want to express something that happened in the past. It's the past tense. For example, quand je suis allée chez ma mère, j'ai mangé une salade et elle était délicieuse. Quand je suis allée chez ma mère, j'ai mangé une salade et elle était délicieuse. In that sentence, we have both passé composé, je suis allé, I went, and j'ai mangé, I ate. Je suis allé, I went, j'ai mangé, I ate. And we also have imparfait. Elle était, it was, elle était. As you might have noticed already, passé composé is actually composed of two elements: the auxiliary verb, être ou avoir, and the past participle of a verb. Imparfait is simply another simple tense. So let's start with le passé composé. Okay? Le passé composé, or should I say composed past, is a composed tense, just like the name indicates. It is used to express a finished action in the past. J'ai mangé une salade. Je suis allé au supermarché. And how do we form le passé composé? We form passé composé using the auxiliary verb être or avoir, être which is to be, and avoir which is to have, and conjugated at the present tense. So basically you just take the auxiliary and you're going to conjugate it at the present tense. For être, to be, what's the conjugation? Je suis, tu es, il, elle, on est, nous sommes, vous êtes, ils sont, elles sont. Okay, now repeat. Le verbe être au présent. Je suis. Tu es. Il, elle, on est. Nous sommes. Vous êtes. Ils sont. Elles sont. So that was for the verb être. Now the verb avoir, to have. J'ai, tu as. Il, elle, on a. Nous avons, vous avez. Ils ont, elles ont. Ok, maintenant, répétez. Le verbe avoir. J'ai, tu as. Il, elle, on a. nous avons, vous avez, ils ont, elles ont. Très bien. Donc ça, c'était le verbe être et le verbe avoir. Both auxiliary verbs. Now, what is an auxiliary verb? If you've forgotten that notion, an auxiliary verb or un auxiliaire is used mostly to compose tenses, such as le passé composé. There are basic verbs, the ones that you're going to use all of the time in French. So what is the past participle? Now, as you might remember, the passé composé is composed of the auxiliary verb conjugated at the present tense and the past participle, le participe passé. How do we form the past participle in French? You will need to take the stem of the verb and add the following endings. So, for first group verbs, basically ER verbs, if you don't remember that, first group verbs are going to have et at the end. Okay? So, for example, manger, ER, the past participle is going to be manger. Same pronunciation, but the verb ends in ER and the past participle ends in E with an acute accent, accent aigu. For second group verbs, they are going to finish in I, okay? I, such as the verb finir. Here's the verb, finir. Here's the past participle, fini. Keep in mind that the past participle will change depending on whether it's a masculine singular, feminine singular, masculine plural, and feminine plural. You'll have everything listed in the article linked in the description of this podcast. And third group verbs. Okay, I always like to start with first and second because the third group verbs are mostly irregular. So the past participle of third group verbs are irregular. And here are some of them. So for prendre, pris. Courir, couru. Voir, vu. Vouloir, voulu. Croire, cru. Did you hear that? Okay. So those are irregular and third group verbs, and they are very important to remember because there's basically no pattern for them and they will change depending on the verb. So what I would advise you is to use one of the best tools that I use myself is a conjugator, le conjugueur. So you type in the verb that you want and then you scroll down all the way to participe passé and you will have the past participle of the verb that you're looking for. Okay, so now that we've summed all of that up, you might ask yourself, okay, that's nice. I know le passé composé, I know how it works, but when should I use être and when should I use avoir? Most verbs in French will use the auxiliary avoir. The vast majority of verbs in French are going to use l'auxiliaire avoir for passé composé. You will use l'auxiliaire être, pardon, so to be, for all reflexive verbs. Se lever, se coucher, s'habiller, s'appeler. Reflexive verbs. The verbs that will use a reflexive pronoun before them. Okay, so for example, il s'est levé. Je me suis couché. And you're going to use l'auxiliaire être for 14 other verbs. 14 verbs. 14 verbes. Okay? Naître, aller, passer, venir, descendre, monter, naître, entrer, rentrer, partir, sortir, mourir, arriver, tomber. 14 verbes. 14 verbs will use l'auxiliaire être. Je suis allé. Je suis venu. Je suis monté. Je suis entré. And there is one detail that you should remember. If you are using l'auxiliaire avoir, the past participle will not change unless the direct object is located before the verb. Okay, I will explain that so that you can have a more visual aspect of this whole thing in my article, posted in the link in the description box. If you're using le verbe être, if you're using l'auxiliaire être, then the past participle will agree with the subject's gender and number. So if the subject is masculine, then the past participle will be masculine. If the subject is feminine, then the past participle will be feminine. If it's plural, then the past participle will be plural. It agrees with the subject's number and gender. Of course, you'll have everything written down in the article linked in this description. Okay, now let's switch to l'imparfait. Okay, now as you may know, l'imparfait is a simple tense, un temps simple, that you should use to express yourself, of course, in past tense. How do we form l'imparfait? To form l'imparfait, this is the pattern that you should follow. Step 1. Conjugate the verb at the present tense. But you're going to use the personal pronoun nous. Okay, nous. Je, tu, il, nous, vous, il. Now use nous. Step 2. Remove the ONS, because at the present tense, verbs that are conjugated using the pronoun nous end in ONS. Nous marchons, nous mangeons, nous chantons, nous dansons. So remove that ONS. You are then left with what we call the stem of the verb. And we're going to use that because step 3, you're going to add the following endings. AIS for je. AIS for tu. AIT for il, elle, and on. IONS for nous. IEZ for vous. And AIENT for il and elle plural. And there's a way that we memorize that, is that we only memorize the ending. AIS, AIS, AIT, IONS, IEZ, AIENT. AIS, AIS, AIT, IONS, IEZ, AIENT. So let's take the verb chanter. Step 1, conjugate at the present tense using the pronoun nous. So it's nous chantons. Nous chantons. Remove ONS and we are left with CHANT. CHANT. That's the stem. And then how do you conjugate it? Je chantais. Tu chantais. Il, elle, on chantait. Nous chantions. Vous chantiez. Il chantait. Elle chantait. The only irregular verb that we have here is le verbe être. So let me conjugate that for you. J'étais, tu étais, il, elle, on était, nous étions, vous étiez, ils étaient, elles étaient. And that's the only irregular verb that you have. Okay, so back to the elephant in the room. When should you use Passi Composi versus Imparfait? That's the big question. Okay, now here's what you need to know. We've seen earlier that le Passé Composé is used to express actions that are finished in the past. Actions that are finished in the past. Actions in the past that are finished. Okay? And for l'imparfait, you have 3 uses for l'imparfait. The first one is to talk about habits in the past. Habits in the past. Like, I used to do this, I used to. Je me levais à 6 heures. I used to wake up at 6 a.m. The second use for l'imparfait is descriptions and state in the past tense. So how to describe something in the past, then you're going to use l'imparfait. For example, la maison était silencieuse. Mais j'avais l'impression qu'elle était habitée. The house was silent, but I was under the impression that it was inhabited. So see how it describes something, okay? There's no action here, it's just a description. And then, the third use for l'imparfait is to express an ongoing action in the past. And in English, we call that past progressive. I was doing this. I was eating. I was singing. Was plus ing, verb ing. Okay? Très bien. So, il me racontait ses vacances quand sa mère l'a appelé. He was talking to me about his holidays when his mother called him. Okay, so let me sum that up for you. Passé composé is used to express actions that are finished in the past. Actions that are finished in the past. L'imparfait is used to talk about, first, habits in the past. Second, descriptions and state in the past tense. And third, to express an ongoing action in the past, or to express the English equivalent, past progressive. Okay? And I would like you to picture this in your mind. Think of a play at a theater, or think of a movie, or something like that. Okay? The decor and the setting, decorations, everything, the setting, will be l'imparfait, and the actors performing on stage or actors performing in the movie would be the Passi Composi. Okay, think of the setting, Imparfait, and the performance of the actors, Passi Composi. That's how I like to explain it to my students when they struggle with Passi Composi versus Imparfait. I know it's not an easy thing to remember, but the more you practice, the more you listen to French, the more you read also, that helps a lot. You'll get used to it and it will be automatic for you. Learning a language, especially French, is also about cultivating yourself, okay? You're going to need to read books, watch videos, watch films, documentaries. Anything that gives you exposure to French is going to help you get better at this. When should I use this? When should I use that? And you're going to understand it more and more. Okay, so the more you're interested in this language, the more you're going to improve, because you're going to be curious and you're going to like exploring the new aspects of this language. So feel free to be curious about French. You're going to need that. And I can only encourage you to do such a thing, because you may learn grammar as much as you want. You're going to learn grammar and conjugation and all of that. I mean, you probably know a lot of grammar already, but the problem is, do you know how to use it? I'm not so sure. So that's why I'm encouraging you to learn by looking at the bigger picture. That's one precious advice that I can give you and that I give to my students, and I hope it helps them. Well, they've gotten better at this and they are more interested in learning French, but it's, at the end of the day, it's the amount of effort that you put into your language learning and what you do, you actively do for it. So I hope that you still enjoyed this little lesson and this little podcast about when to use passé composé versus imparfait. This podcast was in English because I like to discuss about some French aspects to English speakers and to help them understand maybe a bit better how to use this and that in French. So this was an English podcast. I hope that you enjoyed it, and I am looking forward to more podcasts with you. So please let me know if you enjoyed it and share your comments, share your thoughts, or even send me a message if you want. Don't forget to visit the article linked in the description of this podcast. Alors, merci beaucoup d'être resté avec moi aujourd'hui et je vous souhaite une très très belle journée et à bientôt sur Learn to French. Au revoir!